Hello and welcome back to another reading stream. Today we're going to be continuing with Aristotle. We read a bit of the introduction last Monday, and hopefully today we'll get a bit into the meat and potatoes. Forgive me, I'm a bit tired today. And I was already a bit slow, sort of getting set up for this stream. I'd forgotten to plug my mic in, forgot to put the camera on, forgot to load up my model. I forgot everything today, so I really hope this doesn't go poorly. But let's see. The first thing we should probably do is assess the lighting and see if we've got good lighting. Let's have a look. Hand cam. I've changed up the way I've got the hand cam set up a bit. Let me just move it a little bit again. I've changed it away so I can shake the desk a bit, and the camera doesn't shake. I've got the camera on a tripod now, so it's a little bit different. Oh, there was one thing I wanted to do. I wanted to move my audio cable from my computer to my microphone so I can get feedback. It's a bit more tricky now with this setup. Let me try and figure this out. Put that out of the way. It's a learning process. So I can move both at the same time. I can reach it. Yosh. And plug it in here. There we go. Now I can hear myself, which nice to have. Okie dokie. Bring it all back. I'll sit up a little, I suppose. Okay. Oh, I've got a notebook somewhere. What notebook was I using? This one back here. Let's see what I wrote. Was it this notebook? It was. It was. I thought it was. A few pages ahead, perhaps. Ah, there we are. There we go. What did we write? This we've got a sort of notes, and it's mostly just sort of he lists that there are 4 causes, which I assume we'll learn a bit more about, and I've got them wrote down somewhere else in a notebook I've currently lost. But and what his idea of wisdom is, which I think will also be covered a bit more in here. And then most of this book was sort of spent criticizing the pre-Socratics. And those criticisms seem commonplace by today's standard, but were perhaps a bit more a bit more substantial in the past. They more or less boil down to that the sort of the other philosophers, they're not consistent or rigorous enough. Okay. One moment, I have to move stuff again. We're getting there. Oops. Is everything in the right place? I'm bumping stuff around. Okay, that'll surely do. That'll surely do. Let's have a look. The camera now moves quite freely in this sort of direction. If I loosen that a bit, I can sort of move in that freely. But it's at a sort of pivot or something rather than a pan. So it's not particularly helpful. But where was we? I can't remember where we got to last time. I know we gave up pretty quickly, but did we get to the end of a chapter or not? I don't think we did. Hmm. I'm not sure we did. I think we sort of got to the next page and probably got to like the end of a sentence or something and continued. Let's just sort of have a go at it and see if we learn anything. And also figure out how I want to do this. Bring it down here, perhaps? Maybe. No, that's not a good way of having it. This is wonky for some reason. Oh, my thing. Let's see what the end of that last sentence was. Oh, here we go. Okay, here's what we'll do. We'll start from the start of here. How can I get to there? Can't quite reach down there. Come on now. There's a way of doing this, I'm sure. Ay, 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 ay. There we go. I got there. We'll figure this out eventually. The book's a little dark. Let's turn on those filters again, see if we can brighten it up a bit. It gets brighter in here, maybe? Okay, let's brighten it up a little. There we go. Filters. Turn on that. That's not quite right. Perhaps that'll do. Okay, we'll leave it. We'll try and leave it alone now. Contemporaneously with these philosophers, and before them, the so-called Pythagoreans, who were the first to take up mathematics, not only advanced this study, but also, having been brought up in it, they thought its principles were the principles of all things, since, of these principles, numbers are by nature Sorry, I'm constantly fiddling. I've got a new tripod set up, so I'm trying to figure it out. By nature are first, and in numbers, they seemed to see many resemblances to the things that exist and come into being, more than in fire and earth and water, and such a modification of numbers being justice, another being soul and reason, another being opportunity, and similarly all other things being numerically expressible. Since, again, they saw that the modifications and the ratios of the musical scales were expressible in numbers, since then, all other things seemed in their whole nature to be modelled on numbers, and numbers seemed to be the first things in the whole of nature. They supposed that the elements of numbers to be the elements of all things, and the whole heaven to be a musical scale and a number. While I drink some water here, this it reminds me of another book I read on the Pythagoreans once. And how this connection they drew between musical scales and the heavens really caused a lot of trouble around the sort of time of up until the time of, I suppose, Copernicus and Kepler and all those sorts of people. There was this idea that the heavens were this perfect system, that that things operated in perfect circles and the ratios between these were musically harmonious. And so, even though they didn't have very good observations of the heavens, they just had the naked eye at that point, they were pretty confident in this idea that the heavens were perfect, and this perfect was expressed through musical ratios. And so when it came time to actually look at the heavens, with once they started inventing telescopes and other sorts of things, and they saw that this wasn't the case, they rejected what they saw because it didn't match what thousands of years of astrology would have you believe. And this represents sort of a big problem with this kind of philosophy, the sort of the a priori sort of thing, where you rationalize something, even and it seems to sort of it fits your models. It fits your models. That of course the heavens must be perfect because they are the heavens, and perfect must be musical ratios because they are perfect, and it must fit like that. There's this idea that it rationally works out, but in reality that's not what that's not how any of this goes at all. And that's why you actually need to look at things. You need empirical evidence. It doesn't matter what you think something should be. What is it actually? What is the reality of it? And the reality of it is that the heavens are not as they thought they were. And all other properties. Oh, I can zoom in a bit further. If I zoom out, if I'm not zoomed in enough, the words are a bit blurry. And I'm reading this from the screen just as much as you are. And all the properties of numbers and scales, which they could show, agree with the attributes and parts, and the whole arrangement of the heavens. They collected and fitted into their scheme. And if there were a gap anywhere, they readily made additions so as to make their whole theory coherent. For example, as the number 10 is thought to be perfect, and to comprise the whole nature of numbers, they say that the bodies which move through the heavens are 10. But as the visible bodies are only 9, to meet this, they invent a 10th, the counter-Earth. Now, we've discussed this elsewhere, and he's referring to On the Heavens, which I did read. But yeah, there you go. That 10 was the number they went with. It was always 10, and of course, anytime there was a different number, whether you observed something, there had to be some explanation. You've seen a hologram, you've seen an illusion, or you've missed, something's gone wrong, but they never change the theory. The reality rejects the theory, and they stick with the theory. It's all wrong. But the object of our review is that we may learn from these philosophers also what they suppose to be the principles and how these fall under the causes we have named. Evidently, then, these thinkers also consider that number is the principle, both as matter for things and as forming both their modifications and their permanent states, and hold that the elements of number are the even and the odd, and that of these, the latter is limited and the former is unlimited, and that the one proceeds from both of these, for it is both even and odd, and number from the one, and the whole heaven, as has been said, is numbers. It's also worth knowing here that there's the notions of numeracy were not fully concrete yet at this point. I believe often the Greeks did not believe in zero. That was a non-thing. You can't speak of nothing. It is simply nothing. So zero was not a number. One was often also not a number because it is singular. To have a number of things suggests plurality. So 1 was often not a number. 2 was the first real number. If you have 2 of something, you have a number of something. And that is generally how the Greeks saw it, so it's a bit wonky in there. So any maths nerds, I'm afraid you will be upset that the Greeks are like this. Other members of this same school say that there are 10 principles, which they arrange in 2 columns of cognates, limit and unlimited, odd and even, one and plurality, C, right and left, male and female, resting and moving, straight and curved, light and darkness, good and bad, square and oblong. In this way, Alcmaeon of Croton seems to have conceived the matter, and either he got this view from them, or they got it from him, for he expressed himself similarly in... Oopsie daisy, I moved the whole tripod there, that wasn't very good. Still figuring it out. For he expressed himself similarly to them. For he says most human affairs go in pairs, meaning not definite contrarieties, such as the Pythagoreans speak of, but any chance contrarieties. For example, black and white, sweet and bitter, good and bad, great and small. He threw out indefinite suggestions about all the other contrarieties. But the Pythagoreans declared both how many and which their contrarieties are. Contrarieties are also another another thing that these sorts of ancient philosophers really love. It often goes hand in hand with the theory of the four elements, and that reality is organized into opposites, and and that these opposites have in common opposites with each other. So, for example, you'll say good and bad are opposites. But then you'll say up and down are also opposites. But then you'll make a connection, and then they'll say things like, well, because these are both opposites, which one goes with which? And they'll say that up is good and bad is down. And then they then have things like hot and cold, and they'll say, well, hot is good and cold is bad, and that means that hot is also up and cold is down, and they form these sort of maps. And they're kind of nonsense, basically. They're just a load of nonsense. I'm almost certain that if you had shown them a magnet and they could see the magnetic lines, what are they called? The magnetic field lines. If they could see that, they would start associating things to those magnetic field lines. They'll draw a map of it and they'd say, up north is hot and down is cold and left is good and right is evil and then justice and injustice and... it's nonsense. From both these schools, then, we can learn this much, that the contrarieties are the principles of things. And how many these principles are and which they are, we can learn from one of the two schools. But how these principles can be brought together under the causes we have named has not yet been clearly articulated. Has not yet been clearly and articulately stated by them. They seem, however, to arrange the elements under the head of matter, for out of these as immanent parts, they say substance is composed and moulded. From these facts, we may sufficiently perceive the meaning of the ancients, who said that the elements of... I don't like how wonky this is. Who said that the elements of nature were more than one. But there are some who spoke of the universe as if it were one entity, though they were not all alike either in the excellence of their statements or in its conformity to the facts of nature. The discussion of them is in no way appropriate to our present investigation of causes, for they do not, like some of the natural philosophers, assume being to be one, and yet generate it out of one, as out of matter. But they speak in another way. Those others... Sorry. But they speak in another way. Those others add change, since they generate the universe. But these things... Sorry, I'm constantly fiddling with it. Since they generate the universe, but these thinkers say the universe is unchangeable. Yet this much is germane to the present inquiry. Parmenides seems to fasten onto that which is one in definition. Melissus on that which is one in matter. For which reason the former says that it is unlimited, the latter that it is unlimited. While Xenophanes, the first of these partisans of the one, for Parmenides is said to have been his pupil. We definitely read this part, so we're probably rereading a lot here, and it shows how much I remember. It was a busy week, so. It gives no clear statement, nor does he seem to have grasped the nature of either of these causes. But with reference to the whole material universe, he says the one is God. Now these thinkers, as we said, must be neglected for the purposes of the present inquiry. Two of them entirely, as being a little too naive, viz. Xenophanes and Melissus. But Parmenides seems in places to speak with most insight. Or is that more insight? More insight. For claiming that besides the existent, nothing non-existent exists. He thinks that of necessity one thing exists, viz. The existence, and nothing else. On this we have spoken more clearly in our work on nature. and he's referring to physics. But being forced to follow the observed facts, and supporting the existence of that which is one in definition, but more than one according to our sensations, he now posits two causes and two principles, calling them hot and cold, i.e. fire and earth, and of these he ranges the hot with the existent, and the other with the non-existent. See, I told you, this is what the Greek philosophers do, they're obsessed with these contrarieties. And they associate, they form patterns where no patterns really exist. From what has been said then, and from the wise men who have now sat in council with us, we've got thus much. On the one hand, from the earliest philosophers who regard the first principles as corporeal, for water and fire and such things are bodies, and of whom some suppose that there is one corporeal principle, others that there are more than one. But both put these under the head of matter, and, on the other hand, from some who posit both this cause, and beside this, the source of movement, which we have got from some as single and others as twofold. Down to the Italian school, then, and apart from it, philosophy. I think they're speaking of the Magna Graeca, and it's been translated to Italy, I assume. Maybe they had the word Italy back then, would they? No, that's from the I don't know. It's history there. Historians often rewrite things in to describe things clearly that were never actually used at the time. You know, no Byzantine ever called themselves a Byzantine. Down to the Italian school, then, and apart from it, philosophers have treated these subjects rather obscurely. Except that, as we have said, they have in fact used two kinds of cause, and one of these, the source of movement, some treat it as one and others as two. But the Pythagoreans have said in the same way that there are two principles. But added this much, which is peculiar to them, that they thought that finitude and infinity were not attributes of certain other things. Example of fire or earth, anything of this kind, but that infinity itself and unity itself were the substance of the things of which they are predicated. Oh yes, Metaphysics, the book that comes after physics. Hey, yeah, you see, you know, it's, I've heard there's a lot of, I wouldn't say debate, but sort of uncertainty as to the naming of this book. Is it metaphysics as in after physics, or is it metaphysics as in after the book called Physics? Let's have a look. This is part of the Great Books series. I don't know which decade it is, so you can see here. It's this series. Let's find out what year this is. I think this might be like the. I can't remember the years of these. Let's have a look. Where's my bookmark? I definitely don't want to lose my page there. No, I really hate these books, to be honest. I got them because, it's an easy way to find these sorts of books. No one, where else are you going to find someone printing Aristotle? Let's see. Which one are we on? This is the 1988 one. 13th printing. So it's quite a modern one, and I can't remember if the modern ones are good or the old ones are good. Sometimes you get that with books. You want to get the older ones, and they ruin them in the new ones. Although I suspect with these that this particular the Aristotle has probably not been updated for many decades, and the new editions of these books are just simply adding more authors. With they start adding people like Freud and stuff. Really modern people. Where did I put that pen? I put it up here. But I've complained before how I really don't like this book because it's very big, very heavy, the text is very small, and it's not very nicely formatted. And it's just sort of, it's just generally not very nice. I'd much prefer if it was a sort of a softer paperback. I have a pocket edition, especially. Yes, I would get well. You say you don't know whose pockets are that big. I'll tell you exactly whose pockets are that big. A suit jacket, you know, like a business suit. The pockets on those are that big. I assume that's the size you're talking about. The suit jacket pockets are fairly big, and they can fit a sort of where's my other book? Oh, hold on. I'm not gonna be able to reach this. I'm all locked in. Do I have a book in here? I do. I have this other book here. This is yeah. Let me zoom out a bit. This is a book. This is logic. Do I have a ruler? I don't have a ruler. Do I have anything to gauge the size? Here we go. We have a pair of glasses. A pair of glasses to gauge the size. You know, this is a sort of typical side book. I'd say it's a bit small. Actually, it's a bit of a small book. But this is a book that would fit very easily into a suit pocket. It wouldn't fit into a pair of jeans pocket, you know, a denim pocket. But this would fit into a suit pocket, and in my opinion, that is the ideal size of a book. This is quite a neat looking book actually, and this helps with getting through the organon. This is it's a book that goes through Aristotle's logic. You get sort of it goes through all the sort of, you know, the structures of it. You've got all the sort of terms and the contrarieties and the contradictions and all this sort of stuff, and then it goes on to you know, your various sort of you get to the syllogism, and it gets to the syllogisms, and it goes through all of it quite a bit. You get sort of reduction and then it gets like sort of the modern day. And I think this was written in like the 50s or something. Let me check. Yeah, this is from 1958. So imagine what computers were in 1958, and you start getting talking about, you know, this sort of computer style logic, and it's sort of. And they'll mention computers, and they say, oh, this is in use in computers, but look, 1958 computers. I don't even think Fortran existed back then. Oh, let me see who translates this book here, this Metaphysics, because one thing with this kind of book is that we have like a different translator for everything. Well, I flipped that immediately. This is by W.D. Ross. No idea if he's a good translator. I've heard that the Great Book series tends to pick pretty bad translators. I've lost my pen again. Where did I put it? Put it in the drawer. You know, I really wish I could read the whole book at this zoom level, because then I wouldn't have to move the camera at all. But of course, you can't see anything, so we have to be routinely zooming in and panning all over the place. There is one argument to be made that actually it doesn't matter that no one can read it because no one's listening. It's it's sort of whether you're just people just listen and actually reading along. But I think it adds a lot of visual interest. I used to do my reading streams just like in the just chatting screen, and I would just talk. I think that's really boring. I think you gotta have movement on the screen. I've mostly fixed the bouncing camera thing. I've put the camera on a tripod now, so it's not attached to the thing. I can move the table, but when the table stops, the shaking stops because there's none of that nonsense. The fact that it's I disagree completely. The fact that it's in 2 columns is a bad thing because it means the text is smaller. They really compact it to make it as small as possible. I don't like it. I really don't like it. You know, I like it when you know, like this book here I was saying earlier. You know, this is a nice book. You know, the text is a nice size. You know, it's got a nice thickness to the letters and some nice margins and nice formatting. It's very like it's nice to read. It's nice to read. Whereas this is very sort of, you know, it's if I had any other edition, I'd be happy. Of which they are predicated. This is why number was the substance of all things. On this subject, then, they expressed themselves thus, and regarding the question of essence, they began to make statements and definitions, but treated the matter too simply, for they both defined superficially and thought that the first subject, of which a given definition was predicable, was the substance of the thing defined. as if one supposed that double and two were the same, because two is the first thing of which double is predicable. But surely to be double and two are not the same thing. If they are, one will be many, a consequence which they actually drew. From the earlier philosophers then, and from their successors, we can learn thus much. I like my two-column books. You know, the editor went, I'm not doing this in 2 volumes, and here's the whole thing. You know, it's... I do get you there. I do get you there. Personally, I really hate it when a book is in 2 volumes, unless it's like two, specifically 2 volumes. You know, if you have like I've got a copy of what's his name, Edward Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, and I've got that in I think like 12 or 14 volumes. That makes sense, okay? It's a really big book. It's not going to fit in 1 book, but often 2 volumes. That's not a lot, okay? That's only 2 books. You really could have made it just a thick book. You know, I've seen 800-page books. You can do an 800-page book. It's you know, but putting 2 small books in 2 volumes. This Aristotle, for example, this is how many pages is this first volume? This is like 700 pages or so, and then I don't know how long the next book is. Then it's not a thick book. I feel like you could have just made it a thick book. I don't know. Or, well, to be honest, in this case, I don't like how it's 2-columned. I'd prefer if this was like a 4-volume set or something, and it was all a lot more nicer to read. You know, the sort of the nitpicks of how you like your books to be presented. There is an ideal, like there is an ideal. It's, you know, it's like how loud you like your music. You know, you got to have an ideal. After the systems we have named, came the philosophy of Plato. Here we go. We're going to learn a bit about Plato. I've read all of Plato, and I quite like Plato actually. I don't like his theory of forms though. I think it's kind of lame. But I like the sort of general Socratic method. I think it's neat. Which in most respects followed these thinkers, but had peculiarities that distinguished it from the philosophy of the Italians. For having in his youth first become familiar with Cratylus. What is Cratylus? Heraclitean doctrine. That all sensible things are ever in a state of flux, and that there is no knowledge about them. These views he held even in later years. Socrates, however, was busying himself about ethical matters and neglecting the world of nature as a whole, but seeking the universal in these ethical matters, and fixed thought for the first time on definitions. Plato accepted his teaching, but held that the problem was applied not to sensible things, but to entities of another kind. I like Schopenhauer's description of Aristotle. I have not yet read Schopenhauer. I'll get around to him one day. It's like he praises him and shits on him at the same time. The fundamental character of Aristotle can be described as that of the highest intelligence, accompanied by perspicuity, where observation, multifacetedness, and lack of depth are evident. His worldview is superficial, although intelligently created. Yeah, from what I've read of Aristotle so far, I agree completely. He's an extremely intelligent person, but he doesn't look deep enough. You know, he's classically Greek in that sense. You know, out of him he creates almost entirely fully formed formal logic, and it remains unchanged for 2,000 years. More than that. It's not until we have advanced systems of algebra and programming that we expand upon logic, really. Or actually, no, it was, well, close enough. You know what I mean. But when it came to sort of observing the actual world, the messy world, the world that is not perfect, he really was quite he didn't look very deep. He didn't look deep enough. He didn't develop the method, you know? You know, one of these days I'll get around to reading Francis Bacon's Novum Organum, his new organum, because that's really what Aristotle needed, I think. Also, halfway he talks about Plato. Yeah, Plato is better. For this reason, the study of Aristotle today is not very productive, while that of Plato remains so to the greatest degree. I'll have to read all of Plato before I can give my opinion on that. So far, I think that Plato, or the works of Plato, as we see of Plato, they're a really good system of inquiry. Oh yeah, Plato is so fun to read. Like I genuinely read some of them again just for the drama of it. They're practically plays. They're it's so much fun, so much fun. The my theory about Plato, and I've never read into like the scholarly inside of Plato and stuff, but my theory about Plato is that he did initially write it as just a plain textbook of philosophy, but to make it better communicate his philosophy, he put them into the form of these plays. And so he wants to talk about the theory of the one and the many and that sort of thing. And rather than just writing it down as you would in a modern philosophical textbook, he creates this play where he talks to Parmenides and then he talks to whoever the other guy was. Was it Cratylus? I don't know. He talks to the other guy who believes in the sort of Epicurean stuff, or is it? Yeah, Epicurean stuff. No. Heraclitan. Sorry, the guy who thinks all is many. Gotta love how most of the time is, damn Socrates, you're right. Oh, I remember now. You couldn't have a conversation with Socrates. There's no conversation. He'd be a great VTuber. The chat says something, and he's not interested in what you're saying. He's the one talking here, and all you can say is, "Oh, makes perfect sense, Socrates. Oh, I couldn't imagine it any other way, Socrates." It's like, oh. And then, most funny is when Socrates he'll say he'll just go through the most dense train of logic imaginable. He's like, oh, and so this must mean, but we're connecting this with earlier. That must mean that this is that. And as the reader, you've got no idea. Reading for the first time, you've got no idea what he's talking about. And then the person listening is just like, oh, that seems to make sense to me. It's like, yeah, sure, right? Doesn't make any sense at all. Oh, but it's so much better. I've heard about Aristotle. The theory I've heard about his work is that these aren't actually his words. I mean, they're in English, I suppose, but they're not his words. They're actually their lecture notes from his students, and he was giving lectures, and these are essentially those just formatted written very nicely. That's what I've heard. And that would explain a lot, because some of them they're kind of lecture notey, like you go to, you don't need the fluff, you don't need the explanation, you just need conclusion. Cuts to that meme of the streamer going, yes, that's true, I guess so. Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't know the reference you're getting at. I don't know the reference. But I'm curious here. So when I was reading through Plato, I had a few people who would routinely tell me, oh, you've got to read Aristotle. Plato makes so much more sense once you read Aristotle, and it hasn't happened yet. I'm up to Metaphysics now. I've read all through his Organon. I've read through his physical treatise. There's only the Metaphysics, some ethical and political stuff, and then the biological stuff, I think. I think that's all that remains. And so far, I still kind of, I don't think it's really interacted with Plato much, other than his Organon, which really sort of puts a lot of philosophy into a really formal form. You know what I mean? It's sort of, they really make it neat and tidy. Whereas Plato was really quite messy. Hello, other son, the other son. Son demoniac is how I've always read it. Son demoniac. This is what I do. I read books. If you've ever wondered what I do, I read books. We're reading Aristotle's Metaphysics. This is arguably one of a lot of people would argue that this is the most important work of philosophy in all of history, and to some may even be the most important book in all of history if you discount things like the Bible and stuff. There is one dialogue written by Aristotle, the Eudamus. Oh, I don't know. That's not in the chapters on this book here. I don't know if it'll be in the second book. I haven't looked at the chapters of the second book recently. I would like to see a dialogue by Aristotle. That would be a lot of fun. Although, unless you're now going to tell me that it's a lost work and then we're going to have to go digging through the Herculaneum scrolls to find it. I have that one on my bookshelf. I only dabbled in it. Aristotle as a whole, or just Aristotle's Metaphysics? Or really, it doesn't make much difference. He's a very tough author to read. Plato is far easier. Plato is his works are like plays. They read very easily. They're still kind of difficult as philosophy, but Aristotle is tough. Plato easy. It's probably an early writing where he tries to copy his master's style. I can believe that. I can believe that. Well, does it have a subject? Is there a clearly defined subject? What it's about? What Eudamus is about? I think Plato talks of a guy called Eudamus or something similar to that. No, he talks to Euthydemus. I meant Metaphysics. They'll have some other stuff. It's like rhetorics and stuff. I've got this here. This book here is part of. It's like a complete works sort of book. So it has almost all of them, which is handy to have for these kinds of books. They don't show up. I buy all my books used. I buy them all from thrift stores. So how much did I pay for this book? Let's have a look. Let's have it. Does it have the price on it? No, it doesn't, really. Really, they usually have the price written on them. Not in this case. Maybe it's in the back? Not in the back. Huh, funny. Well, I paid... I probably didn't pay very much for this book, and to buy this book brand new would be really expensive, I bet. All my books would be really expensive brand new. So I get them all from thrift stores, and they're very cheap. Does this one have a price on it? No? How the hell do I know the price of these books? Usually, it's probably varies by country, but the way they price books here in the UK is they just write them on the inside, and it probably written £1 or something. I think it is about the soul. There's a Greek, Latin, Spanish edition, super cheap. Don't have money right now. I've lost my train of thoughts. Oh yeah, but I get all my books secondhand. I really think it's the way to get books. Sometimes I'll go to the actual bookstore where they sell the brand new books, and the selection there's it's okay. Okay, it's not terrible, but it's lacking. It's really lacking. Like if there's even a philosophy section at the bookstore, what would they have? They'll have Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. Who else would they have? They'll have Plato's Republic. They'll have something by Nietzsche. That's probably about it. Maybe some modern stuff. By whatever the guy with his weird wonky eyes. I forget his name, and stuff like that. But you're not going to get the complete works of Plato or the complete works of Aristotle, and you're certainly not going to get lesser known names. Like you're not going to find who's like you're not going to find like Plotinus or something. It's not there. It's not there. And that's the bookstore. That's the good part. Okay. Go to a library. There isn't even a philosophy section. You will find nothing at the library. At least where I am. It's actually hard to have classical books, especially if you live in a small town. Yeah. It's Russian. I see. I'm in England here, and so it's so at least I'm probably better than most people in terms of access to books. It's England. You got Oxford and Cambridge and some the classical world of education. Well, not you know what I mean. And so someone buys a book to go study philosophy or something, and then they're done with it, and they throw it in a thrift store, and it ends up God knows where in the country, but it always stays in the country. Usually it stays in the same sort of general area, but, I get books from all over places. I think I've got, sometimes a book, they'll have like it's come from a library, You can see this, oopsie daisy, it's not my camera. It's been pretty well taken off at this point, but you can see this one here used to be at a library. Let me zoom out a bit. You can see this here. It has signs of being in a library. There was some tape here and a thing here. Typical library sort of thing. This used to be in a library. And does it have any evidence? Oh, hang on. We got a name. We got a name of who owned it. Someone called Kenneth Reedy. And I assume they're a nobody, but it's sort of you get the sort of history of where the books come from. And often these sort of second-hand books, they'll have like margin notes or annotations in them. I've got one funny annotation on a book. Oh no, I think I've got it packed away in a box at the moment. But where it's from a guy's private library, some rich guy, and it's got a dedication note in the front, and the dedication is in Latin. I can't remember what it says at this point, but it's got a date on it, and the date is written in like an ancient Roman way, where it doesn't just say March 19th or something. It said ad cal vii Aprilis or something. It's like 7 days until the first day of April. That's what the date had written on it. That's like an old Roman way of doing dates. It's outrageous, extremely pretentious. Surprisingly, they had Marshall McLuhan. I don't know that. Kind of blew my mind, both the fact and the book. My local library is actually based. Shit ton of philosophy they got from all Plato, Aristotle, Kant, Hegel, Tereni, way more, von Humboldt and all that. You're very lucky. My library has nothing, absolutely nothing. If you were to take these books, this great work series, you go through all these sort of authors and stuff, all these famous people of history. Not a single one of them is in my local library. Not one. Not one. You will not find a single one. That's how bad my library is. You go to a new bookstore, you'll find maybe 10% of those characters. It's really bad. It's really bad. I think so everyone knows that no one really goes to libraries anymore. In the UK, they're basically just homeless shelters. Here's how you fix libraries, okay? There's a few things you can do. First thing, get rid of the computer. You don't need a computer in the library. That's like, you're doing some records or something where you need, some registry, office stuff. That's not a library, okay? You're not reading books, okay? That's, you need to do some documents for some office stuff. Okay, you need a computer. Make that a different building. Make that the registry office or something. Not part of the library. The library should be for reading books, okay? It's not for... And if you're studying, and maybe, okay, well, bring your laptop. Bring a laptop, okay? The problem is that the people who go to the library go there for the computers because they are homeless and they don't have a computer. They don't have a home to have a computer with. So they have to go to the library to get a computer. They're not there for the library, they're for the computer. So take the computer out of the library and put the computer somewhere else. Put the computer in, like, the council office or something. Let them go there where they can do whatever there. That's fine. I'm not saying they can't use computers. It just doesn't need to be in the library. The library should be a place for reading books and maybe a bit of studying. Quiet studying. Yeah, they've always kind of been information centers, I think, but they don't need to be one and the same. That a lot of people go. If you go to a library, the librarian, what qualifications do they need? Most of their qualifications are information center related stuff. They need to know how to fetch documents and how to interpret stuff and how to do all kinds of that sort of thing. Yeah, that's what most of the qualifications and the work of a librarian is. And it's not actual putting books on a shelf. That's like a small part of the book. They really don't need to be the same. It's like okay, museums. Museums are the same. A museum is a place of research. You go study at the museum. But the museum is also a tourist place where you have stuff on display that people go see. But they're kept really separate. When you go to the museum, and you just want to look at some cool rocks or crystals or something, you're not blocked by scientists in the way, doing all kinds of stuff to them. It's completely separate. Most people aren't even aware that a museum is a place of research. I mean, there is virtual... No, it's got to be physical. It's got to be physical, I think. I find it stupid that editorials are looking to charge and pay. Yeah, that's terrible. Look, there's no value to, like, a digital book if it exists physically. It's... They're doing what to rocks? I don't know. What do you do with rocks? Has anyone watched Rory Rocks? What do you do with rocks? I know you get the rocks and you look at the rocks, but what do you do to the rocks? I really liked Rory Rocks. That was a fun anime. I'm a big fan of this sort of cute girls doing cute things animes where it's there's no real conflicts. It's just like that like life is kind of good and the drama is meaningless. You know, that's very fun. I think they just kind of look at the rocks. I don't think they do anything to rocks. Maybe they burn the rocks at some point or something to do some test or something. I don't know. But certainly not crystals. I'm pretty sure you don't do anything with crystals. I think you just look at crystals. They're just like, yes, this crystal is very very big and very symmetrical. Yes, we'll put this in our museum. They're very pretty. I think. No, I could never be like geology is neat, okay, but it's not my kind of autism. I think I like chemistry. There's some crossover between geology and chemistry. Obviously it's matter, but I much like doing things with the rocks rather than just looking at the rocks as they are. With that's I guess that's the difference. The difference between chemistry and geology, is it called geology or is it mineralogy? I don't know. Rory Rocks has confused me. One of these, someone needs to make I've mentioned my idea for a chemistry game, but forget game for the moment. Someone needs to make a chemistry anime, like a lab chemistry anime where someone they're trying to get a PhD or something, and they're in the university system, and they've got their mentor and all this nonsense, and they say, oh, I've booked the lab for this Wednesday. Why are you in this? Oh, well, I've booked it instead. Now I've got it. So get your rubbish out of here. And who turned off my experiment? You've ruined it. And it was such a good anime. Such a good anime. But let's have a go. Let's have a go at some Plato. I forgot whereabouts I was. Plato accepted his teachings, but held the problem applied not to sensible things, but to entities of another kind. For this reason, that the common definition could not be a definition of any sensible thing, as they were always changing. Things of this other sort, then, he called ideas, and this is the same word as forms, the same Greek word. I think the Greek for form, like the theory of forms, is idea, like in Greek idea, and I think that it does translate immediately to English ideas. So I believe these are the exact same word. He called forms. He called ideas. Things of this other sort, then, he called ideas. And sensible things, he said, were all named after these things, and in virtue of a relation to these, for the many existed by participation in the ideas that have the same name as they. Only the name participation was new, for the Pythagoreans say that things exist by imitation of numbers, and Plato says that they exist by participation, changing the name. But what the participation of the imitation of the forms could be, they left an open question. Oh yeah, so about the theory of forms, I can't say I really understand it. It's something people have spent their lifetime studying, so it's clearly as deeper than I think. But the idea that I get of it is that it's like the blueprint of something. It's like how does something know to be the way it is? Like if you have some things are circular, so there must be the idea of circularity, the form of the circle. But where I don't quite get it, or maybe I don't agree with it, is why are some things forms and some things are the imitations of the forms? For example, let's say you have a circle, and it's a wonky circle, and you say, oh, well, it's a wonky circle, but the form is circle, it's circularity. So it is attempting to be a perfect circle, the form of the circle or something. And that seems sort of along what they sort of say. But why is the wonky circle imperfect? It's certainly imperfect if you say it's supposed to be a perfect circle, but why must it be a perfect circle? What if the wonky circle is the form? It's the form of wonky circle, you know what I mean? Maybe it's not quite as universal as circle, perhaps. It's clearly a subset of circle, but why is it not a form? Why must there be this priority list? Why cannot everything be the form? If I sort of if I'm Sun, maybe I'm the form is the VTuber, and I'm an imitation of a VTuber, but I'm not a perfect VTuber. What is the form of a VTuber? You have no answer for that. What is it's sort of, to me, it seems like it's just superficial observation to me. Some things, I suppose, the idea of like the one or the many or something, that maybe you could say there are forms of those, but I don't know. I feel like it's yet another. Yeah, because then there would be infinite forms. Well, that's the problem I've got. Why are there not infinite forms? How many forms are there? How do you determine what becomes a form and what doesn't? It seems to me arbitrary that they've picked and choose things that seem, that seem obvious to be forms, but there's no clear definition. I think he wants the most general ones. Well, that's useless as a philosophy. I mean, it's somewhat practical, but it's not concrete. There's, what are the boundaries of it? How do you really know what is a form and what isn't a form? And I don't think I feel like there's no answer to that. And I've been told that Aristotle will give me the answer to this problem. We'll find out through 200 pages of metaphysics. Whoops, I'm knocking everything over. Further, besides sensible things and forms, he says there are objects of mathematics which occupy an intermediate position, differing from sensible things in being eternal and unchangeable from forms in that there are many alike, while the form itself is in each case unique. Since the forms were the causes of all other things, he thought that their elements were the elements of all things. I wasn't reading. Since the forms were the causes of all other things, he thought that their elements were the elements of all things. As matter, the great and small were principles. As essential reality, the one. For from the great and the small, by participation in the one, come the numbers. A Spanish philosophy professor said, "The job of philosophy is to state the obvious. The job of science and art is to state what is not obvious. If you don't state the obvious, people forget it." See, I've got this really, like, a perhaps antiquated opinion that science is philosophy. That it is simple. It's what do you call it? It's empiricism, ideally. That the natural, not even necessarily natural philosophy. It can refer to things more than just the natural world, but it is things that are observable and it can be not proved, but it has to have a certain sort of a posteriori sort of vibe to it, I think. There's an arrogance among scientists, particularly for a very modern scientists, who they've been taught that science is the opposite of philosophy. That philosophy is simply everything that science hasn't proved yet. And to me, this is a very mean thing to say. And while there's I get where they're coming from, but it's not It's like I think Darwin conceived of evolution as a philosophy, that the philosophy that things evolve, not necessarily just animals, but all things evolve. Ideas evolve, and everything evolves in in a metaphysical sense. I haven't read his work, but that's what I've heard. And so that's sort of the philosophical view of evolution, whereas the scientific view of evolution is, it's talking about, animals physically evolving, the scientific concepts of evolution, not the philosophical concepts of evolution. But I don't know, that I think science is too arrogant, and philosophy gets beat up too much. I think once I get to Francis Bacon, I'll really figure out what I think about that. I think I read that. But he agreed with the Pythagoreans in saying that the one is substance and not predicate of something else. And in saying that the numbers are the causes of the reality of other things, he agreed with them. but positing a dyad and constructing the infinite out of great and small instead of treating the infinite as one is peculiar to him. And so his view that the numbers exist apart from sensible things, while they say that the things themselves are numbers, and do not place the objects of mathematics between forms and sensible something on the next page. Oh, how do we change page? Now we're really close to the camera. And sensible things. His divergence from the Pythagoreans in making the one and the numbers separate from things, and his introduction of the forms, were due to his inquiries in the region of definitions, for their earlier thinkers had no tincture of dialectic. See, this really is from what I've read so far, this is the strength of Aristotle. This is what Aristotle does good. In that the previous philosophers, including Plato, are so loose. They're not concrete. They have an idea and they have things that make sense in the idea, but they haven't cleaned up the edges. They haven't found the boundaries and they haven't filled in every single hole conclusively. Whereas Aristotle comes in and he has this form, this idea of of really putting boundaries on everything, and it must be watertight. And he makes dialectic into a science. Let's see. Well, due to his inquiries in the regions of definitions, for the earlier thinkers had no tincture for dialectic, and his making the other entity besides the one a dyad was due to the belief that the numbers, except those which were prime, could be neatly produced out of the dyad, as out of some plastic material. Yet what happens is the contrary. The theory is not a reasonable one, for they make many things out of the matter, and the form generates only once. But what we observe is that one table is made from one matter, while the man who applies the form, though he is one, makes many tables, and the relation of the male to the female is similar, for the latter is impregnated by one copulation. But the male impregnates many females, yet these are analogous of the first principles. I'll be honest, I'm gonna have to reread this again when I go through the VOD, so I'm not quite getting what he's on about there. I know he's fussing over the intricacies of the one and forms and stuff and plurality, but I'm not quite getting it. I'll be honest. Plato then declared himself thus on the points in question. It is evident from what has been said that he has only used two causes, that of the essence and the material cause. For the forms are the causes of the essence of all things, and the one is the cause of the essence of the forms. And it is evident what the underlying matter is, of which the forms are predicated in the case of sensible things, and the one in the case of the forms. These, that this is a dyad, the great and the small. Further, he has assigned the cause of good and that of evil to the elements, one to each of the two, as we say some of his predecessors sought to do, such as Empedocles or Anaxagoras. The problem lies with the term doing, action, creating, praxis, poiesis, techne, science, episteme. It seems that sometimes these terms are used interchangeably, as when someone says, this has its science when performing Miller's. That is definitely a big difficulty in reading these ancient Greek words. We have these common words such as art and craft and even words like science and philosophy, essence, and they're very they have notions today a bit different in the past. Ultimately, these are first-hand actions. Well, philosophy arises from these sciences and arts, whether they are poetic introduction or praxis, so it's a second-degree knowledge. Not sure what you get, but let me read that again. I didn't quite understand what you meant. Ultimately, these are first-hand knowledge, while philosophy arises... Neither do I, Benny. Also, hello, Benny. Benny Bonnie. Why am I calling you Benny? Bonnie. Bonnie. See, it's all your fault, Bonnie. You put Benny ahead of your name, and I bet I'm going to predict that 70% of the chats you go into, people say, and you do a first time chat, and people say, "Hello, Benny." You should have called yourself Bonnie, who is Benny, and it would have worked. You know, I was initially gonna be called Soul. I'll be honest. Like, you know, Soul meaning sun, and you know that it's like fully Roman sounding. But then people would call me Soul, and that would be terrible. So that's alright, son. I am. Although I never predicted that people would connect son like you know, like child, like you're winning, son. No, I don't like Soul. I don't like Soul. It's too like Linkin Park vibe for me. You know, people call me Soul. I know a VTuber called Soul, Seiru Soul, and people his name is Soul, but a lot of people call him Seiru, which I think means like dragon in Japanese or something. I think it's Seiru like Seiryu, like Seiru. It means like dragon, right? I'm not sure. He's a dragon. The wagon. You know, but it's Or I remember there was another VTuber I knew, Benny. Fuck, Bonnie. Why? I've never made this mistake before. Look, it just shows you I'm totally brain fried. I never call Bonnie Benny. I always call her Bonnie. You know, so I'm totally brain fried that I can't even refer to people's names correctly. You know, but I remember the people think you're a guy. Why do people think you're a guy? Ben. That's worse than the time someone called me son Albanian. Ben, I'm calling you Ben from now on. Ben, no, I'm joking. I'll call you Bonnie. You need to do the gender bent Bonnie. Ben Bonnie. It's just you, and you put on a voice changer, so you got a deep voice. Oh dear. I remember anyway, there was another VTuber who's long since vanished, but he was called Parsecs, like the space thing, the unit of measurement or something, and he was called Parsecs, I think 99, and he didn't want the 99 on it because that looked kind of lame. Sorry, Raymond, but you know he didn't want numbers in his name. He wanted to be more VTuber esque, and you're gonna have like a first name and a surname to be a VTuber. It's the rules, okay? And so he decided he'll call himself Astro Parsecs. He's still called Parsecs, that's his name, right? But he's got Astro at the start of it. And immediately everyone said, "Hello, Astro," and he's like, "Oh fuck, I ruined it." He's ruined his name. Now everyone calls him Astro. Well, he's gone now. Oh well, rip in peace. He was cool. He was like a science VTuber. Did a lot of physics stuff, astrophysics. Our review of those who have spoken about first principles and reality and of the way in which they have spoken has been concise and summary. But yet we have learnt this much from this. That of those who speak about principle and cause, no one has mentioned any principle except those which have been distinguished in our work on nature, and he's referring to physics again. But all evidently have some inkling of them, though only vaguely. For some speak of the first principle as matter, whether they suppose one or more first principles, whether they suppose this to be a body incorporeal. For example, Plato spoke of the great and the small, the Italians of the infinite, Empedocles of fire, earth, water, and air, Anaxagoras of the infinity of things composed of similar parts. There is a Spanish-speaking VTuber who has numbers on her name, Micah05, and everyone jokes with that, saying the one of the O5 clan. See, I would have made a joke because it's the fifth Micah. You know, like whenever you have a low number, it's like, okay, what happened to the other four? I do like the idea of like, oh, that would be such a great idea. You know, I should have had free names. I would have been really Roman if I had free names. You know, like, I'd be like, you know, what's a third name? That's like your clan name, right? Like Gaius Julius Caesar of the Julius clan. His first name's not Julius. That's not his name. That's effectively his surname. His name was Gaius. And then the past one, I think what they call the cognomen or something, that was Caesar. That was like a nickname, I think, or something. I don't know. I forget the Roman naming rules. Guys, I have a name. It's a short name. Commone. My grandma had a Commone once. Commode. My grandma had a super long name. Oh yeah. Then if it's Spanish, I heard that's pretty common there. All those, you know, like all those super long names, like it's the third or something. I have a boring name with no fancy family history. I gotta give it to my sister. She gave my nephew a Greek name. Greek is back in fashion. In Spain? It's really far away from Greek. From Greece. These, then, have all had a notion of this kind of cause, and so have all who speak of air or fire or water or something denser than fire and rarer than air. Some have said the prime element is of this kind. These thinkers have grasped this cause only, but certain others have mentioned the source of movement, i.e., those who make friendship and strife, or reason or love, a principle. The essence, i.e., the substantial reality, no one has expressed distinctly. It is hinted at chiefly by those who believe in the forms, for they do not suppose either that the forms are the matter of sensible things, and the one the matter of the forms, or that they are a source of movement, for they say that these are causes, rather, of immobility and of being at rest. But they furnish the forms as the essence of every other thing, and the one as the essence of the forms. I'm going to give it to South America. That kind of Spain, the other Spain, the Western Spain. That for whose sake actions and changes and movements take place, they assert to be a cause, in a way, but not in this way. Not in the way in which it is its nature to be a cause. For those who speak of reason or friendship, class these causes as goods. They do not speak, however, as if anything that exists either existed or came into being for the sake of these, but as if movements started from these, in the same way that those who say the one or the existence is the good say that it is the cause of substance, but not the substance, but not that substance either is or comes to be for the sake of this. Therefore, it turns out that, in a sense, they both say and do not say that good is a cause. For they do not call it a cause qua core, but a cause qua good, but only incidentally. All these thinkers, then, as they cannot pitch on another cause, seem to testify that we have determined rightly both how many and of what sort the causes are. Besides this, it is plain that when the causes are being looked for, either all four must be sought thus, or they must be sought in one of these four ways. Let us next discuss the possible difficulties with regard to the way in which each of these thinkers has spoken, and with regard to his situation relatively to the first principle. I'm going to do the same one day. Just name the kid Epicharmus. What does Carmus mean? I feel like there's a joke there. Also, I confess, I'm definitely have to read this twice after I've read this, because he's lost me. He's lost me. But it will become obvious on the second reading, I'm sure. Those, then, who say the universe is one, and posit one kind of thing as matter, and corporeal matter, which has spatial magnitude, evidently go astray in many ways. For they posit the elements of bodies only, not of incorporeal things, though there are also incorporeal things. And in trying to state the causes of generation and destruction, in trying to state the causes of generation and construction, and in giving a physical account of all things, they do away with the cause of movement. Further, they err in not positing the substance, i.e. the essence, as the cause of anything. And besides this, in lightly calling any of the simple bodies, except Earth, the first principle, without inquiring how they are produced out of one another, I mean fire, water, earth, and air, for some things are produced out of each other by combination, others by separation, and this makes the greatest difference to their priority and posteriority. Karmos, derived from the noun kara, which means joy. I see, like kalos. Like, is it similar to kalos? So it would be something like the one who brings joy. Hang on, I think let me go find my Greek thing. I think I wrote this once. Where is it? Farm work and plant. I've been trying to learn Greek. There's a part where he says he likes the farm. No, that's kalos. There was a different word. I think I had karmos. You know, sort of having a go at sort of learning some Greek, and it's very slow because I haven't bothered to get a Greek keyboard, so I'm handwriting it. Did I have the word I was thinking of? No, it's chronon. That's time. That's right. That's a different word. Yeah, I think a lot of the difficulty with learning different languages, you have to get a feel for the sort of the flavor of words. You know, they sort of words have like you see a word and you don't know what it means, but you get a feeling of what sort of word it is. You know, of course, I'm a native English speaker, so I can do that very easy with English, but with other languages, it's very difficult. You don't have that sort of feeling. It takes a long time to get it. I don't think I've seen this word before. That's kamne, that's tired. And I think I've gone past where it might be, so, well, whatever, fun sort of a side tangent. Whatever. Oh, throw that back. Ooh. No, I've turned my fan up a little bit. It's got a bit hot. Okie dokie then. I bought the complete works of Lucian. He's the one who does dialogues with heroes and gods, right? Lucian, or is that Lucan? There's two of them, Lucian and Lucan. Lucan of Samosata, bilingual Spanish and Greek. Bible. I'm going to read that crap in Greek eventually. I'd like to read some stuff in Greek, not philosophy in Greek. That would be a lifelong task to try and do. But I would like to read. I'd like to read some of Homer in Greek and some of the playwrights in Greeks. Oh, I didn't even know you did that. That's funny. For one, in a way, the property of being most elementary of all would seem to belong to the first thing, which they are produced by combination, and this property would belong to the most fine-grained and subtle of bodies. For this reason, those who make fire the principle would be most in agreement with this argument, but each of the other thinkers agrees that the elements of corporeal things is of this sort. At least none of those who named one element claimed that earth was the element, evidently because the coarseness of its grain. It's kind of funny because I feel like you could make earth an element. Robo, the first fine section. Yeah, we went to the moon. Oh, is that from Lucian as well? I thought that was a different author. I thought that was from I don't know who I thought that was from, but yeah, the one where they go to the moon. in ancient Greek, in ancient Greece. Of the other three elements, each has found some judge on its side. For some maintain that fire, others water, others air is the element. Yet why, after all, do they not name earth also, as most men do? For people say that all things are earth, and as Hesiod says, earth was produced first of corporeal things. So primitive and popular has the opinion been. According to this argument, then, no one would be right who either says the first principle is any of the elements, other than fire, or supposes it to be denser than air but rarer than water. I heard a beeping sound. Not sure where I heard the beeping sound from. Oh, they're all... what are you talking about? They're all true stories. They're all true stories. Livy wouldn't lie to me. You know, they're all true stories. The concept of fiction, I don't think really existed back then. I think even Plato shits on people who are lying. They say, no, you're lying. The story you told isn't true. You should be put to death for this. It's talking to like people who write plays. He even does the classic thing from all those ancient travels books. Don't believe me? Go there and check. yeah. When you go there yourself, go speak to the ancient Egyptians yourself. Although we must remember, we must bow down before Herodotus, because he was right again. Herodotus is right about everything. We must accept our place, that Herodotus was right about everything. It is time to accept the facts. If that which is later in generation is prior in nature, and that which is concocted and compounded is later in generation, the contrary of what we have been saying must be true. Water must be prior to earth, and earth to water. There's so much then. Move my whole thing down. So much then for those who posit one cause, such as we mentioned. But the same is true if one supposes more of these, as Empedocles says. The manner of things is four bodies. For he too is confronted by consequences, some of which are the same as have been mentioned, while others are peculiar to him. For we see these bodies produced from one another, which implies that the same body does not always remain fire or earth. We've spoken about this in our works on nature. And regarding the cause of movements and the question whether we must posit one or two, he must be thought to have spoken neither correctly nor altogether plausibly, and in general, change of quality is necessarily done away with for those who speak thus, for on their view, cold will not come from hot, nor hot from cold. For if it did, there would be something that accepted the contraries themselves, and there would be some entity that became fire and water, which Empedocles denies. Hello, Mr. Totles, is that what we're calling him now? I think, who's phoning me? One moment, stream ruined.